The most common lookup function in Excel is a Vlookup. A Vlookup means a vertical lookup. We have an order form here in the sheet called Second Vlookup. And what I'd like to start with is to type a part number in A6. So let's type 5,000. I then want to add a Vlookup function to B6, which is basically going to look up the part number I type in A6, 5,000, find it in the leftmost column of this table, which is sorted from A to Z. Once it finds the 5,000 in the leftmost column, on the same row, I want it to return the description, which is in the second column. And it has to find an exact match. Let me show you what I mean. So in B6, I'll go equals V. If I click once on Vlookup, it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value on the same row from a column you specify. By the default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. So I'm going to double click Vlookup, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. The first thing it wants is the value it's to look up. Well, I want it to look up what's in A6. Now I have intentions of moving this function to the right, so I want to lock in just the A but not the 6. So I'm going to press the function key 1, 2, 3 times so I get a dollar in front of the A, and then I'm going to go comma. I then want it to compare it to this table, which is in F6 to I13. And that table is not going to shift in any way, so I'll lock in the whole range by again pressing the key F4. So this is going to look up A6 and find it in the leftmost column of F6 to I13, comma. This is known as a table, so as a result, it now wants to know what number of the column contains what you're after. Well, I'm after the description, and that is in the second column, so it's number 2. So we don't give it a letter like G, because it's not a spreadsheet. It's a table inside of a spreadsheet, and we want what's in the second column, which is column 2, and then comma. The fourth and final parameter is, do you want me to find the closest match if they type a part number that's not in the left column of the table? Or does it have to be an exact match? I'm going to double click false because it has to be an exact match. The square brackets indicate that this argument or fourth argument is optional. If I didn't put false, it would default to true. And so it would find the closest match if I typed a part number that didn't exist in the first column of the table. The description of the part number is large gearbox, and I'm going to double click the thin black cross and fill it down. To test the theory, I'm going to go to A7, and if I type 2000, it should tell me it's a small sprocket. If I type 400, it should say not available because I put false, which means it has to find an exact match, and there's no 400 in the first column of the table. So it says not available. So when they type 400, they go, oh, that part number is not available, it must be 4000, in which case it's a small gearbox. If I then type 6000, that's a bracket. Now I also want a Vlookup in C6 that returns the price, and the formula is pretty much the same as B6. If I look at the formula in B6, I want the price also to look up what's in A6, compare it to F6 to I13, but the only difference is the price is in the 1, 2, 3rd column. So that's the only change I have to make. I'm going to drag this formula to the right 2 cells. I'm going to click on C6, and I'm going to change the 2 to a 3, so I get the price. I'm going to click on this formula, and I'm going to change the 2 to a 4, so I get the supplier. And it's those two formulas I'm going to fill down. So now I immediately can see that 5,000 is a large gearbox with 750 from Automotive Antics. And I could even select column C and turn that into dollars. So if I was to type 7,000 in here, I will get a cog for $50 from Auto Supplies. Another example of a VLOOKUP might be the sheet called first VLOOKUP. I might, for example, want to know if this number here in A exists in this list in C. So in E4 I'll put equals V and I'll double click VLOOKUP. I'll tell it to look up the value in A4, comma. Compare it to the table C4 to C13. Lock it in, comma. What I want returned is what's in the first column because the table is only one column wide. So 1, comma. I'm looking for exact matches, so I'll double click false. Enter. The value AA100, which is in A4, does exist in column C. If I then fill that down, I can see what values exist in both lists. This NA here is telling me that AG987 does not exist in the blue list. We could even put a little bit of a more detail here, but that'll do for the moment. That's a VLOOKUP. The other thing with the VLOOKUP I'm thinking is coming back to second VLOOKUP, is the list doesn't have to reside in the same sheet. I'm thinking what I might do is I might make a couple of duplicates of second VLOOKUP. I'm going to hold the control key and drag second VLOOKUP once and then control second VLOOKUP again. So I get version 2 and version 3. I'm going to call second VLOOKUP 2 order form. And in the order form, I'm going to actually delete the formulas and I'm going to delete the parts list. So all it literally is in this sheet is an order form. I'm then going to go to second VLOOKUP 3 and I'm going to call this part list. And I'm going to delete everything except the parts list. So if I come back to the order form, I could go to B6 and go equals VLOOKUP and double click VLOOKUP. I want to look up what's in A6, that's the same, and I'll press the F4 key 1, 2, 3 times so I lock in just the A, comma. Now my table is not here anymore in F6 to I13, so I use my mouse to go off to the parts list and I highlight A6 to D13 because that's now where my parts list is, comma. I then have to tell it the number of the column I want returned, which is column 2 for the description, comma, and I want an exact match, so I double click false. Enter. So it still finds a large gearbox, even though the list is in another area. Now I've made a mistake. I haven't put the dollars around A6 to D13. I'm going to go undo and I'm going to select this area here and press F4 to lock it in. So I've locked in A6 to D13 because that table doesn't change in any way, shape or form, and then I'll fill it down. I can then drag this formula again and fill it to the right. Click under price and change the 2 to a 3. Click here and change the 2 to a 4. Highlight the 2 of them and fill them down. So Excel 2010, 2013, 2016, the list doesn't have to reside in the same sheet. It did in earlier versions. So when we have our formula, we simply look up what's in A6, compare it to the table in the sheet called parts list in A6 to D13, and return what's in the second column, and it has to be an exact match. So it's just where the table resides that differs.